Well, good morning. This is Scott over at ReadySquirrel.com. Today I'm going to discuss an article I just wrote, 44 tools and gadgets that work without electricity. I've been thinking a lot about emergency preparedness and food storage lately. And this is a list of some of the items that I came up with. If you don't want to listen to me gab, you can head on over to ReadySquirrel.com. I made a PDF, a downloadable PDF of this article if you want to use it for reference. And I'm not going to get into specifics here on actual products or brands. I'm not trying to sell any of this stuff. This is just informational, and maybe this will jog a memory or spark an idea on something that you might need for your own emergency preparedness. This should go pretty quick. I'm not going to dwell on each one of these too much. The first thing I'm thinking of is a grain mill, something that you can use with a large storage of like durum wheat or wheat that you've got stored in number 10 cans. I think a hand crank grain mill is a great idea. The one shown in the picture, you can actually also hook that up to run off of a small internal combustion engine or an electric generator. But this gives you the opportunity to actually grind your wheat or your hard or soft grains manually. There's different coffee makers that you can use. When I say coffee makers, I'm thinking of coffee makers where you're, say, boiling water on a campfire or on a backpacker's hiking stove. We've got a French press here, which I've used. I like French presses. They're really actually very easy to use. I've got 7 steps here on how to use it. A camper's percolator, which is kind of old school. Maybe your grandma or grandpa had these when they were camping. It's a good way to make cowboy coffee. I've got 7 steps on how to use the camper's percolator to make that cowboy coffee. Hand crank coffee mill. You can adjust the grind to coarse or fine depending on how you're going to make your coffee, what kind of coffee maker you're going to use. A mortar and pestle used to grind or crush. If you're thinking survival, emergency preparedness, and you have the option, more than likely you've got a garden, there's a ton of stuff you can do with the herbs that you're growing with a mortar and pestle. Hand crank food mills. I've got Layman's Food Mill listed here. Layman's is a website that sells a lot of products that are the kind of stuff that the Amish use, stuff that doesn't have electricity. Again, I have no vested interest in Layman's, but they do have a lot of products for off-grid home living, and they really apply to survival and emergency preparedness. So these food mills, they have a bunch of different attachments. You can make purees with them, remove seeds, skins, and stems from the vegetables you're harvesting out of your garden, applesauce, tomato sauce. There's a hand crank blender out there. Well, actually, there's several different models. They're not as good as the electric ones, but you can crush ice with them. You can make smoothies, vegetable soups like butternut squash, and they're good for camping or tailgating. Like if you want to make mixed drinks or something like that. Rotary egg beater. That one's kind of obvious. Scramble eggs, make cream, stir salad dressing, make sauces, whip up some smooth batters. Hand crank dough mixers and food processors. A lot of these have similarities. Like you think that the hand crank food mill and the dough mixer would be the same thing, but they're actually not. This allows you to manually crank something to knead your dough so you don't have to actually do it by hand. If you've got arthritis, or if you just don't want to do it by hand, this is a pretty handy tool. Waffle iron, campfire pie irons. These things are awesome. Rome Industries pie irons. If you've never used one, you've got to check them out. They're basically, they're not much different than the what's the word I'm looking for? The pans that we use. They're cast iron pans. They're basically mini cast iron pans on a stick. The only thing I would say is you got to make sure you season them right. I think Wisconsinites call the sandwiches you make with these pudgy pies. I've actually got another article on these pie irons on ReadySquirrel.com you can check out. I actually got a link here to the article. Cast iron tea kettles. I'm a big fan of cast iron, if you can't tell. You can boil water in these. You can use them to humidify a room if you've got a wood-burning stove. It's kind of an interesting fact. Rusty cast iron won't hurt your tea, and Japanese tea connoisseurs actually prefer that their cast iron tea kettles have a little bit of rust in them. So here, tea. You can make tea, coffee, hot cereals, instant soup. Again, humidify the air. I mean, it's a tea kettle, so you can boil water with it. So anything you can make with boiled water, you can use your cast iron tea kettle for. Excuse me, cast iron tripod and chain. This is a great idea. About the only time this doesn't really work for me is if it's winter. That's the big thing. Cooking outside is awesome, and it totally fits emergency preparedness and food preparation. So if you are in an area where you've got pretty good weather, or if you have an emergency during the summer or the spring, this is something good to have because you can basically build your whole camp around it. Cooking tripod and a chain. It's basically a three-legged cook stand that sits directly over the campfire, and you can rig these up to do different things. You can hang pots from them. I think down here, there's a tripod grill that actually hooks to some of the tripods, and then you can actually put pans and pots and stuff on it. It's a little more not so precarious as the hanging chain. I got a video here. Cold Cracker Bushcraft, he's awesome, making a tripod. So you could actually make your own tripod to hang stuff from. Camp Dutch ovens. If I could only afford one piece of cast iron, it would be a Dutch oven. You can do just about everything for it. Tip, turn the lid over and use it as a frying pan. Get some flat kebab skewers. Don't get the round ones because the food will spin on the round ones. Cast iron skillet. 5 things you can do with it. Seed sprouting kit. I think this is like a secret weapon of emergency preparedness. You can grow seeds in a closet. You don't need sunlight. And you basically can prepare an entire garden in your house when it's snowing out. So I think seed sprouting is something you should look into if you haven't. Cast iron loaf pans for baking bread. Hand crank noodle machine. Hand crank meat slicer. Hand crank meat grinder. Indoor propane range. You want to make sure that you get a propane stove that's rated for indoor use, and that you can actually manually light it. Some of the newer stoves have solenoids that stop gas flow ignition if the power goes out, so you want to make sure that you get the kind of propane range that you can actually light by hand. Wood cook stove. I wish I had one of these. I don't. They're expensive. I think a wood cook stove, especially if you live in a cold area, is pretty awesome because they not only heat your space, they also allow you to bake and cook on top like a stovetop. Propane refrigerator, commonly used in RVs, don't require electricity. That's a nice to have, especially if you're off grid. Manual water filters, they come in all shapes and sizes. I have a lot of experience with the backpacking ones like these Sawyer Minis. And then there's also larger family size water filters that you can use. Just kind of depends on your situation. But if you've got a big family and you're going to be washing dishes and stuff like that, you're going to want to take a look at some of the bigger units. Kilner butter churner, hand crank nut chopper, hand powered potato ricer, hand crank cheese grater, rotary food mills, hand tools that don't use electricity. And I've got 16 of those here. Axe for cutting wood, knives, hand saws, wood chisels, saw horses, shovels of various shapes and sizes, rakes for gardening, hoes for gardening, a scythe, machete, pickaxe, wheelbarrow, rope and parachute cord, pruning shears for harvesting, crowbar, seizing wire, chicken wire for mending fences. And then don't forget the items you need for tool maintenance: whetstone, manual sharpening system, manual grinding wheel, replacement blades, honing oil, leather strop. Next tool, manual can opener, mechanical egg timer, which allows you to 0 to 60 minutes, allows you to time things. A manual juice press. Cleaning implements, cleaning when the power's out. So washboard, 5-gallon buckets that are clean. Possibly a composting bucket toilet. Composting mixture of like 60% organic material like wood chips and 40% peat moss. Wash basin and pitcher, bleach, all-in-one Cal Steel bar soap, quick dry towels, clothes horse for drying your clothes. That's like one of those wooden racks. Hand crank washing machine. Sun shower. These are really super useful. I helped somebody build an off-grid cabin, and this is how we stayed clean, and I really look forward to that. I'd fill that thing up with water, 5 gallons of water in the morning, put it on a rock in the sun, and at night the shower would be so hot I'd have to pour like half the water out and put some cold water in there because it was too hot to take a shower. Got directions here on how to use the sun shower. Fermentation crock, hand crank cider press, hand crank emergency radio, hand crank pump, hand crank lantern, ice cream maker, not a necessity, but it might be a nice to have, a crank winch, and that's the end of the list of items that I've got. I appreciate you guys hanging out while I shoot the breeze, and let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and thanks for stopping by. I'll see you next time.